Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. A few announcements here. On the evening of Monday, May 6, 2024, W2 Communications and Cyber Risk Alliance are bringing cyber tacos back to San Francisco. If eating free tacos, sipping on margaritas, and mingling with cyber professionals from all over the world sounds good to you, make sure to register to secure your spot. Visit securityweekly.com/cyber tacos to RSVP today. Also, get ready for an electrifying experience at the 15th annual Identiverse. Join 3,000 plus identity professionals at the Aria Resort and Casino in Vegas on May 28th through 31st, 2024. For 4 days packed with dynamic learning and collaboration. Don't miss out on keynote speakers including Danae DeFore, CISO of United Airlines, Tucker Bryant, entrepreneur and former Googler, George Roberts, Director of Identity and Access Engineering at McDonald's, and many more. As a community member, receive 25% off your Identiverse 2024 tickets using code IDV24-SW25. Register today at securityweekly.com/IDV2024. All right, and now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can follow along and read all my snarky comments at securityweekly.com/ESW358. That is the number of the show today, number 358. And you can follow on there. Welcome to the show, Tyler. Good to have you.
Yeah, great to see you again, brother. You know, once again this week, you had me at tacos, my friend. You had me at tacos. Cyber tacos. That's right.
Sprinkle some SD-RAM in there. Cyber tacos. So we got a lot going on today. There's not a whole lot of fluff in here today, and we've got 26 stories. And Let's start with the fundraising, because there's still we're seeing some pretty decent size of you're making faces. What do those faces mean, Tyler?
No. You're spot on. We're seeing, you know what it is. We're seeing sizable raises in a situation where we're seeing micro exits, right? And we'll get into what I mean by that later on as we get through some of these stories, I'm sure. But you know, I was thinking back a while back when I don't know if we had him on, Mike Prevet on, but he wrote a piece a while back.
We did. It was just me and Mike. Yeah.
And did you guys go over the K-shaped recovery?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he wrote a piece. I don't know if we covered it on here or not, but he wrote a piece called the K-shaped recovery, and that basically was saying that the best are going to fly. In the midst of the downturn, the best will fly and the rest will fail and fail miserably. And there will be very little space for middle ground. And I was thinking about that this morning when I was looking at a bunch of the funding stories and the bunch of the acquisition stories. And it's just such a weird scenario where you're seeing a lot of money pumping in for the next crop, and you're seeing massive failures happening at the same time. And I think that's the kind of the state we're in. You know, there are a few that are exiting really well, and we'll go over some of those exits, but the majority of them are dying a crazy death. And this week is no different.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of prioritize what we talk about here based on level of drama. All right. And this might be so there's a lot of rumor going on. I don't know how much of this is confirmed or not. So maybe we can put up the dumpster fire graphic for this. But
Adrian, we're going to prioritize by the size of the dumpster flames. That's what we're going to prioritize by today.
So there's an exclusive out there. We weren't going to mention a name here, but there is a headline now that says Wiz is in talks to acquire Lacework, which is one of their competitors. All these companies had similar, they were at least unicorns, right? Like I think Orca was maybe the smallest of them at 2 point something billion dollars, but Wiz was way up there at like 10 billion after their last round, and
You mean
Lacework was
Lacework?
yeah, Lacework was 8 point something, and now we're
Yeah.
talking about one of them buying the other. And the headline says for $200 million. This is a company that in November 2021 had a single funding round that was over $1 billion, and now we're talking about them selling for 200. What in the world could have happened here, Tyler?
Yeah, my man.
So, again, assuming any of this is true, it's all rumors.
Sure.
Probably a week from now, we'll get the full story.
Yeah, so let's call this what it is: armchair quarterbacking, right? We don't have any inside knowledge, no proprietary knowledge, and it's just one of those situations where it's fun to speculate. So we do want to let the audience know this is speculation. There's no inside baseball here or anything. But I when the rumors of this first started earlier this week, I immediately discounted Lacework as the potential target here, because the original rumor was a massive CNAP company will be bought this week or next week, where they will be bought for 500 to 600 million, and it will pay back the investors that invested in the company. Basically, Lacework, like you said, they did a $525 million C round in January 2021. Just the C round.
A C round. Not seed.
Oh, it gets better, because the D round in November was an additional 1.3 billion, according to Crunchbase. So the total invested capital is $1.9 billion into Lacework, which is absolutely astronomically incredible. So I'm like, there's no way that this is the one that's getting acquired, right? I immediately discounted, said it's got to be Orca. Orca has about 600 million invested, give or take. This feels like a return the capital to the investors and go find a new ballpark to play in kind of situation. But then somebody fanned the cyber drama flames, and the news article came out this morning that it looks like the latest is that Wiz is picking up Lacework, and that's where the rumor mill is swirling. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, who's actually being acquired and for what amount. But my understanding, and from people in the know that I've been seeing on LinkedIn, is that is what's happening. It's Wiz picking up Laceworks at a song, and that there was a late volley. That the reason this isn't done is there was a late volley from, I think, maybe either Palo or Cisco. I can't remember which one, which threw in a $300 million offer. And it's kind of upset the apple cart in the late game here, right before things were going to get signed. It was an 11th hour kind of pitch in there. Again, all rumors, unsubstantiated. I'm just repeating the shenanigans I'm hearing. But man, going from 1.8 billion or 8 billion in valuation down to 200 million is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Basically, that means the last 12 months they've had zero revenue growth. Zero. It's got to be near zero or negative.
Or negative.
For that to be that low against $100 million of ARR.
So yeah, when we look at, so there was a LinkedIn post that went into some of the reasons for this. So it sounded like somebody maybe has some knowledge of what's going on. I went over to Glassdoor because I think that's always an interesting place to check out. To kind of figure out what's going on. It looks like a tasty drink there, Tyler. Looks like a very tasty.
Oh, it's a delicious drink. Maybe I can convince the team to put up the Tyler Shields Raspberry Smash recipe onto our website one of these days. So hopefully I'll get it up there for you guys.
It sounds delicious. But yeah, so a lot of it seems. Let me try and summarize what I heard between Glassdoor and between these LinkedIn posts. So, going after solving the wrong problem. Is something I saw. Customer churn was repeated many different places. So issues with customer retention. So maybe customer success, not able to keep people on board, which kind of points to maybe not a great product or maybe not product market fit. Which I thought these guys were probably all pretty much in line feature parity wise. Like none of this. All the CNAP folks have pretty much bought or acquired or built most of the same stuff. No.
The incredible thing about Laceworks is when you talk about product market fit and delivering value to customers. I was in guess it's got to be 2018, working at a company that partnered with Laceworks. And their product had nothing to do with what their product is today. They've pivoted at least twice trying to find product market fit. And the LinkedIn article you referenced, which I don't have a problem saying his name, the author of that, because he put it on LinkedIn. It's open. Pramod Gosavi. He's an investor at 1011 Ventures, if I recall. I think it's 1011. I might be wrong. But he's just a super smart dude, and he's in the know. The reality here is they took in hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital before PMF, before product market fit. And if you do that and you never hit product market fit, that is a disaster waiting to happen, where you just spew money trying to acquire customers who don't want what you've got.
Right.
Now, they did get to 100 million in ARR from what I've been told. So there's something there, right? They sold something. There was something on the truck. But from what I understand, they had very little revenue growth over the last 12 months, which, when you're talking about an exit multiple with zero growth and high churn levels, which I've also heard that their customers were leaving in droves,
you're
going to get 2 times current revenue, maybe 3. That's 200 or 300 million valuation on your business.
And it sounds a lot like the same story we saw around FireEye. So FireEye was kind of the same, where they IPO'd before they had market fit. Like they had this weird NX box. Nobody understood what it did. They thought they were buying an IPS or an IDS, but they were buying this malware analysis system that had, I still don't understand the technology in terms of like what they would pull off the wire and how they would choose what they pull off the wire. But they sold it really well. They marketed it really well. But as soon as customers got the product in their hands, they're like, what is this? Like, I don't understand how I can get any value out of this product. And at one point I was one of those customers. My CISO at the time bought it against my suggestion. And I actually tracked the total cost of ownership of that product. And it was a negative number. We were way in the hole on that number. It never produced any kind of value for us, any kind of measurable value. Every time it had a false positive, there was a whole process we had to go through. We had to zip up files and send them back to FireEye for them to analyze. And then they would tell us to just, put a hash in so that file doesn't trigger again, like very, very janky, very, non-polished product. And we saw them go for, it was like less than 2x, I think, is eventually what STG kind of parted them out for. I forget what they got combined with, but they got smushed into Trellix or Symantec, or something else that went somewhere.
Yeah, Laceworks was originally a container security tech, right? Competing with like Twistlock, right? That's where they started. Aqua. That's where I was. That's where I was partnering with them in 2018, and I needed to partner with a container tech. And if you think about it, every time you do a pivot and you have customers that are paying you, and you move to some other tech, you move to some other value prop, or shift your key value prop quite a bit, you're going to churn those customers, right? They bought you for container security. Now you're runtime workload security, or you're pivoting to some other third thing, right? So every time you make those, you're increasing your churn quantity too. And I know they've done at least 2 or 3 pivots over the last 5 years, which it's just churning customer base left and right. Yeah. And when you churn, it absolutely wrecks your business economics, your unit economics for the business. So,
and your brand.
Surprised, and your brand, absolutely. And I'm not surprised at the end result of this. What I think has my jaw hitting the floor is the absolute value dollars lost to investors here. I mean,
it's almost impressive.
Impressive is an understatement. Very rarely do you see almost $2 billion invested in a company to return.
This is like WeWork value destruction.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. And I think somebody should do a cross comparison kind of dollars thing. And this is major newsworthy. This isn't cyber niche newsworthy.
Right.
This is value destruction on a top tier level. Absolutely.
This is like we should create an Adam Newman Award and give it out for this guy.
And then the Adam Newman Award for 2024.
That's his name, right? The WeWork founder?
Yeah. Absolutely it is. Yeah. I love it. I think it's a great idea.
Oh man. So we'll have more details I'm sure they're flying out right now. As many rumors are going on, they're going to have to announce something. This is going to pressure them into making some kind of official announcement. So by next week's show, we should have some idea of what's going on here. And it said it was going to a private company. So, I mean, the fact that we're already seeing numbers now, even if there's not a formal number, we'll probably get something through back channels that's pretty close, I would think.
I want to do a quick cross compare on something for you on this one,
Yeah,
Adrian.
go for it.
Lacework, 1.9 to 200 million of valuation on 100 million of AR. Cross compare that with the acquisition from a few weeks back of Avalor. Roughly, rumor has it, 3 to 5 million in ARR, $300 million acquisition in 18 months. Isn't it what it, I mean, just the juxtaposition of those two acquisitions, where a company that's making 3 to 5 million in ARR can get bought for 300 million, while a company that's making 100 million in ARR gets picked up for 2 or 300 million, is incredible to me, because the math just doesn't add up there. The dynamics are not right.
Yeah, 100x to like a less than one, some kind of decimal
2x or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I did the math. This is if they sell for 200, that's 2.4% of their 2021 valuation.
How would you like to be the investors that now have to explain that to their limited partners that gave them all the capital to invest? Hey, by the way, we're not down 10% or 20% year over year, which would be considered a massive loss in market. We're down 98.6%.
How'd you like to be the CEO that destroyed 97.6% of the value of the company? I mean, not that it was ever worth $8.4 billion in zero interest rate free money times, but still.
I mean, it's literally the definition of dumb money. The investors that put in late money, what did I say, 1.3 billion, is the definition of dumb money.
There is a silver lining here, though. They apparently did not burn all the money, and some money was given back.
1.3 is a lot. And that was only, like I said, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they burned that.
2 years and 5 months.
And maybe that's the story
to the day.
That kind of, to get back to my original reason why I said it wasn't them. They took in so much money. They might be able to return $1 billion to the investors in cash, right? Like, that may
that's
be
what I'm saying.
here.
It's a silver lining. Like, at least they didn't burn all that,
Yeah. I'd love to see the P&L, the chart on this one, but we'll never get to.
No, but it's I mean, it's a good postmortem. Forget the name of the company. Like these are the kinds of lessons that need to get out there. Maybe one day, Tyler, you can put together a book that just kind of, I would love to see that, where like every chapter is a study, right?
That could be fun.
maybe like a positive one, then a negative one, alternate between the chapters.
Adrian,
that is a book I would pick up.
Don't threaten me with a good time, buddy. Don't threaten me with a good time.
All right. So on to more positive news. Cyera raised $300 million at a $1.4 billion valuation. $460 million in total funding. DSPM vendor. What do you think of this one? The DSPM's already moving pretty fast. A lot of them have been picked up.
Yeah, man. Listen,
that's a big Series C.
It's massive. And when I was seeing numbers like that at the peak of the ZERP era, part of me, and I never said it publicly because I always felt like I was going to be ridiculed for being the only guy that went, what the hell's going on here?
Right.
But what the hell's going on here? Why does a company need another $300 million to execute in today's execution model, right? Like, we're all about being hyper efficient.
At what point do like all the angels and stuff get bought out? Is that one of the reasons we see these sometimes? No?
Depends on the deal. It depends on the deal. Depends on the round. I mean, depends on a number of things. It can happen at any time, but oftentimes the angels will make it all the way to the end because they're not offered liquidity.
Right.
It's not even a scenario of when should it happen? But like, they're just sometimes not even offered. And you ride the ride till that ride is over, no matter what happens on that roller coaster, right? You don't have the option of getting out. Other times, if you've got enough equity, you can sometimes even just contact, when a round is being done, contact the investors and say, hey, take me off the table.
Yeah.
It's an extra $10 million, $5 million, take me off the table.
Because I remember years in ancient history, Tenable took a $250 million raise and everybody lost their minds, right? $250 million went to Tenable, but several of the founders were exiting in that round. So once you heard that, it made a little bit more sense.
That's different than angels.
Right.
That's different than angels. Founders often will exit on, usually in the B+ rounds, will take money off the table on every round, because the investors want the founders to do that, because it aligns them with the moonshot result that the VCs need. The VCs need each investment they do. They want each investment to return the entire fund. So if they've raised a $500 million fund and they're putting it to work, they're looking for each investment to return the whole fund, because so very few of them are successful. Right. So what they'll do is on the B, C, D rounds, they'll say, hey, founders, take 3 million each off, 2 million each off, 5 million each off the table. And so they're able to cash out chunks on every round, because it aligns them with the longer moonshot. It makes them want to go big, because they've already got a safety net now, right? And so, yeah, you see that kind of happen throughout. They'll take small chunks off on every single round.
Yeah, it is a bad example, because that was, Tenable was already 15, 20 years old at that point, and they're getting ready to IPO it and take it public. So they, they brought in, what's his name? Amit Yoran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yep,
that was a very different case.
Yes.
So next one here is Cohesity, late stage 150 million Series F, led by IBM and NVIDIA. Almost $1 billion funding total. Data backups.
Well, first of all, NVIDIA is in the situation where they have so much money they don't know what to do with it. They're literally spewing cash at this point because of their stock, the incredible rise of their stock over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised they're putting money to work.
Cohesity is the company that just acquired Veritas. I knew they sounded familiar.
Yeah, and it's run by CEO Sanjay Poonen of oh goodness, Sanjay was VMware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, VMware fame. He famously ran VMware through the roof and got that one exited and taken care of. So yeah, this oftentimes investors don't necessarily understand or look at or truly understand the dynamics of the market. But when you got a guy like Sanjay driving the car, it's like putting your money behind Verstappen in F1, right? You don't care what car he's in. Verstappen's the best driver on the planet. Well, Sanjay is one of those guys that he's asked for money. People give it to him, right? So can't say that's what happened here, but it is a situation, I think, where, Cohesity is riding behind the success of a particular group of executive leaders.
Yeah. So this is the assumed combined valuation here is like $7 billion now that they've combined with Veritas. And since Sanjay came on, apparently he pivoted the company more towards security.
So what I do love about Sanjay, whether you want to say this is a good investment for the venture money behind it or not, what I do love about Sanjay, and because I've had the opportunity to meet with him a bunch of times when I was an analyst, he's not a kind of guy that's going to come up with an idea and think about it. He's a doer. He's a bet maker, a shot taker. Much like Nikesh Arora and what he's done with Palo now, they place bets and they make a move. And win or lose, they're gonna make a move. And Sanjay's not afraid to do that. So I see why they got behind him. I see why he's made the moves that he's made. Will it be successful? Armchair quarterback, who knows, right? We can all place our bets on that. But Sanjay's a top tier quarterback in the NFL. He's not a rookie.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out here that this is not Series F for a startup. Like I don't think you can really call this company a startup at this point. Having just merged with Veritas, $3 billion company and a $3.7 billion company coming together. we're not talking about a startup anymore. And the
It's just a
combined
privately
company.
held beast. It's a
Yeah,
privately held beast being backed by venture and private equity style investments.
yeah, yeah. All right. Let's see. We've got Onum, which these are, at least one of the founders is from Devo. So I think this is we see this a lot. We'll see founders peel off, and it looks like they're almost building the same thing again. Like I'm not sure what that's about. If it's like a hindsight thing, like now that I know what I know, I can't wait to get out of this company so I can start another one and do it right. I don't know if that's the idea here, but it's data analytics and security platform is what Onum is. So this is $28
Yeah.
million Series A.
Oftentimes it's the I've got a better idea of doing it, and the company that eventually grew up around my first idea, the big co. You get bigger, it's harder to make bets. It's a bet can be catastrophic when you're at a big level, and that's kind of the innovator's dilemma, so to speak. When you get big enough to make smart moves, you're too big to make smart moves, right? And so founders get chomping at the bit and get a little bit, hey, I got to get out of here and take another run at something. And what do I know? Well, I know the same thing I built before. I just know how to do it better than before. So let me go try that. And venture capitalists are they love multi-time founders that have had successful exits, right? They absolutely love it. One, the founders in a situation where they're aligned for the moonshot because they've already got a big exit under the belt and they already have a big war chest behind them. And two, they hopefully won't step in all the landmines that the first time founders are going to trip into. So, it's not uncommon.
This next one is really interesting. So Alethea raises 20 million. It's a Series B, led by Google Ventures. Total funding now is 34 million. This is early detection and mitigation of disinformation. So
Ooh,
it looks like it's like a digital risk prevention protection type of thing, like brand protection.
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out who the customer would be on this, and if it's makes sense. Having just talked to Joe from Binary Defense about the work they do for the Cleveland Browns and for other professional sports teams. There's a little snippet here where they say they proactively identify online risk long before your social listening tool tells you it's trending on Twitter. Our AI models detect narratives that could damage your brand, assess the risk to your organization, and enable swift mitigation that's in line with your goals. So, yeah, I don't know what the mitigation piece would be, but I guess I could see the value in, finding out early that somebody's got a deep fake or they're making up stuff about your brand.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually the second or third pitch or description I've heard in this space recently. You know what it reminds me of? And I don't know if I think I recently had this conversation with you, Adrian. It reminds me of the old original idea for Zero Fox back in the day,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Zero Fox was all about brand protection, disinformation protection, looking for things that could ruin you from an outside in perspective. They were just so way ahead of their time that they had to pivot away from that. We're in an era now of like Russian propaganda and military messaging propaganda and things like that. So I don't know who the buyer is. It could be the Facebooks of the world and the Twitters of the world, but it also could be individual executive or enterprise brand reputation impacting disinformation as well. So it's kind of neat, something unique, something a little different. It's going to be fun to follow.
Yeah. And the name of the product is Artemis. So maybe it's intentionally a moonshot. I don't know.
Artemis wasn't which book or TV show was that from? Was that from Ready Player One? Artemis.
Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, childbirth,
And
Greek
and it's
goddess. It's
also the
also
female
the name
the
of
female lead character
the
in
NASA.
Ready Player One.
Oh, was it? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's also the name of the NASA project to go back to the moon.
Hmm. There you go. I just remember it mostly because I read Ready Player
Which
One a couple years ago.
we're only like a year away from that, from putting people on the moon again. A year, maybe two.
Everything comes full circle. Well, I'll be watching it on TV, excited again.
All right, let's see. Sprinto raises 20 million Series B, total funding 38.1 million, automated risk and compliance platform. We've seen a bunch of these. Is this the one that's, I think, a European, no, San Francisco based? We had one that mentioned, well, this one does mention GDPR, but I thought we had a European company here.
It's an intelligent automation technology platform that empowers businesses to navigate risk and compliance with clarity and confidence.
It was Deutsche Telekom, Salvador Technologies, I think was the one I was thinking of. Or no, it was Nymiz.
Well, they have served thousands of customers and extended its reach to more than 75 countries. And they're just raising a $20 million Series B.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to say that. Nymiz is the one I was thinking of. Gotcha. Focused on GDPR. Protection of information and knowledge privacy. A lot of these companies, like, I just can't really, not able to glean a whole lot from their websites. Like, I would really have to have a briefing to understand what they're doing here.
For sure.
A lot of this just general data analytics, data protection, data privacy. Yeah. Sprinto tears down silos and produces a connected view of assets, risks, controls, and compliance.
It's just never been a space that I've ever followed.
You could describe Exonius and Jupiter One like that, right? Like,
I've always found that space. And
I'm sure this is not that
Snorefest. Yeah, I've always found that space just to put me to sleep, so I never really followed it that closely.
Yeah. All right, what else we got here? Anything else interesting here? So Weil Ventures has a new company that they're backing, Miggo, touted as the first application detection and response vendor. So we got a new acronym, ADR.
So it's bad enough when Gartner makes up new acronyms all the time. Do we really need all the individual companies making up acronyms on top of it? Like, let's just try to align on at least Gartner's pile of garbage, right? We don't need to create some additional pile of garbage alongside it.
Well, I mean, it's easier to tell what they're going to be doing than the last three that we just talked about.
Sure. Yeah, I guess. And maybe we can give it a little bit more credence when we call it, because listen, when you call something Cyber Asset Attack Surface Management, CAASM, it's such a mouthful. It doesn't really say anything about what the actual acronym does. At least this acronym is super direct. Yeah. App detection and response. Like, I get it. I respect the hustle on why you've chosen to name it that. Well, but at the end of the day,
I know where I'm selling it. I know who the buyer
and at the
is,
end
right?
of the day, the thing about an acronym and the thing about a market is a market doesn't exist until there's 2 to 3 competitors in the market. Then a market exists. So be careful what you wish for when you stamp your own 3-letter acronym, because you better hope at least a handful of companies come into that market to validate it, or you're never going to have a line item in somebody's budget because you're the only one in the world that makes it. So it's kind of a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah, so it looks like creating more data from within applications itself, giving you more visibility into what's going on with the application, which kind of reminds me of anti-bot type stuff. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how they're grabbing that extra telemetry. But from the acronym here, it sounds like they're expecting incident response, SOCs to get use out of this. Yeah. So we're saying traditional tools like WAFs and CNAPs may not fully capture the dynamics of modern distributed applications. So it sounds like there's a pain point there in what tools are out there, and they're going after that gap.
Could this be a reinvention of
RASP?
IAST or RASP?
Sounds like it. I mean, that was the, I used to describe that stuff as like a, endpoint security for the web server or the web application.
The difference being, when I read their pitch, it's about behavioral and holistic and contextually aware, which is kind of like the 2.0 version of what RASP was, where RASP was like looking at individual apps or APIs and commenting on, hey, we saw X happen in this individual node. If you think of it as a complex system of a graph of nodes where each node is like an API endpoint or a component of the application, it's important to holistically connect all that to be able to understand a view of how the application operates. Because where RASP operated in a single app and looked at all the function calls, all those functions are now busted up into a bunch of separate apps or separate APIs that communicate, right? So I think this is a reinvention of the old idea of RASP in the modern infrastructure play, which I think is actually really cool if it works well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I imagine there's some complexity there. People are pretty, I don't know how much of that you experience, but people are pretty squirrely about what they package with their application, right?
So they used to be, but no longer do we even have the concept of an app. Now everything is
Right.
micro apps, microservices, API derived. So
Yeah.
are they?
Yeah, I
Is it
guess.
changing how people think about it? It might be.
Yeah, so if it's not something you're shoving into your monolithic J to
Correct.
EE app
That's
inside a
exactly right.
Java VM, yeah, it makes sense. If it's all you de-risk, modern application architecture de-risks a lot of that
Right.
stuff.
You
A lot
might
of those,
break one function, but you're not going to
right?
take down the entire monolith.
Yeah, like I could never attach a debug to production, so hunting down production bugs is really tough because
Bingo.
it would just absolutely destroy, the performance of my
That's right.
giant Java app that
Yep.
2,000 people were using all at once. All right, we got some acquisitions here. Noname, who I give a hard time for their name. I guess it wasn't as bad as Redacted because Redacted's gone. They just shut down operations about a year ago or so. But Noname seems to have done pretty good. 500 million acquisition by Akamai. That's the estimates I've heard are roughly between 16 17x. So
To be
great
clear,
exit.
um, this is also armchair quarterback. This has not been, I think,
Okay.
publicly announced yet, right? This is another one of those situations where the rumor mill's swirling pretty hard. I don't believe this one actually has closed
Oh,
or even
this is not final yet. Okay, that's
correct.
good
This
to
is
know.
not an
Yeah.
actual thing. It's another dumpster fire. So different flames of dumpster fire discussions here. It's a difficult one for me to talk to because my day job is at a competitor in this market, so I have to be careful
I see.
what I say. Right, Traceable directly competes with Noname, but my understanding is that this is not a massive exit. This is a return the capital plus a little bit more. It's a positive
Oh,
exit
okay.
for early stage to mid
Eh,
stage. Late
it's
stage
not a
is getting their
failure
money
either.
back. It's not. It's not. But the rumor mill story around it is that it's a slightly better than break even, return some positive equity to the early stakeholders
Gotcha.
scenario.
Okay. And then we've got Beyond Trust picking up a just-in-time access company Entitle. I don't know a whole lot about Entitle, but I don't know how much you know about this one.
I don't know anything about this one other than I like the name because it really kind of does connect with what they do.
Entitlements.
Yeah, and they have a name as opposed to No Name, which has no name.
Oh,
Sorry, No
oh,
Name.
snap.
It's just friendly banter, my friends. Just friendly banter.
Zscaler picks up Airgap networks to extend zero trust SASE leadership and eliminate the need for firewall-based segmentation. Okay.
Yeah, that one's and that was a micro, if I recall correctly. That was a micro deal, like in the
Oh
tens of
yeah, small
millions.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember they did pick up what was Edgewise was the micro segmentation vendor that Zscaler picked up.
Got it. No, this is micro in size, not micro in target, but
Right. Well, I mean that one was also a similar acquisition.
Sure.
Is what I'm saying. It was also a fairly small one, fairly. I think Edgewise was fairly early stage. Micro
When's the
segmentation
last
in
time?
general never went
Yeah, Adrian,
widespread.
when's the last time that we've had this many acquisitions in a week or 2 weeks worth of show?
Last
this
week,
is
I
an
think.
incredible. Yeah, okay. The last
Yeah.
2 weeks have been an
Yeah,
incredible
no,
flood of
there's
acquisitions.
a glut. There are a glut of acquisitions going on. I don't even include all the services, MDR, MSSP related ones, because those seem like they have their own patterns. Because a lot of them are tend to be regional. And but yeah, it does feel like a lot. It feels like we're getting at consolidation. Too many companies.
I think there's a couple pieces to it, right? There's too many companies, taking them off the table. I also think that many of them are finally getting to the point that I predicted should have happened 8 to 10 months ago.
Zombie corns?
Totally too early, is that the zombie corns are just finally ready to die, and they're ready to accept whatever people are going to give them, which really, if you put yourself in the seat of the company holders, God, 10 months ago, what could have Lacework got for that company instead of 200 million? They could have got 700 million, 800 million, but they're like, we're going to turn this around. We're going to, like, come on guys, be real about what the true potential of your situation is, so that you don't have to get to the end of your runway before you sell your business. Yeah. Be smart about when to get rid of exit your business, right? Be smart when to take that equity down. Don't let the ego run you over. And then, of course, super producer Sam, puts out a good point. We're coming into RSAC season, RSA conference season. Maybe there's a little bit of that at play too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of zombie corns, I do have a link in here. You inspired me to go check out Eileen Lee's stuff. The post she has, her 10-year post, 10 years after coining the term unicorn. Really interesting post, worth reading. It came out in January. I'd missed it when it came out, but she also uses the term. She uses the term zombie corns. She also uses the term unicorpses.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, zombie corns. The idea of a zombie company is that it lives on forever, right? It's impossible to kill a zombie. I think what Laceworks is a unicorpse more than a zombie corn. I think that's a much better characterization.
And then she also has a term called zerpicorns, which are zero interest unicorns, ones that became unicorns in this, insane zero interest market. Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome. I've had the opportunity to speak with her a number of times. Just a fantastic investor and a great human being. I'm actually part of the Cowboy VC scout group that helps scout deals for Cowboys. So she's awesome. I love the work she's done. And when I saw this article come out, I mentioned it in the CyberWhy almost immediately. It's a really cool piece. I highly recommend reading it.
It's a long piece, but there's absolutely no fluff. It is all data.
It's all meat.
It's all charts. It's all interesting if you're interested in this kind of stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, she's super cool.
Let's see. Did we get to all the acquisitions? No, there is Armis.
There's more, but wait, there's more.
There's still another one. Armis acquiring Silk Security. I don't know much about Silk Security. Armis, is that the IoT security company?
It is. It's the IoT security company that semi-pivoted without calling it a pivot into the Chasm market, into the cyber asset management market.
Right.
To compete with Exonius and Jupiter One. Silk is an Israeli company. I don't know enough about Silk, but the point I want to bring up on this one is, instead of digging into what Silk does and why this particular acquisition occurred by Armis, what I'd like to bring up is the number of exiting Israeli companies, because they are flying off the shelf right now. Pretty much every exit that I'm looking at is a snap up of an overinvested mid-level return cyber company out of Israel. And it's what really interests me is when I think back to the ZERP era, I noticed YL Ventures and Teammate. I think Teammate did it too. Don't hold me to that one, but YL definitely did. When those massive C and D rounds were going into these Israeli companies in the height of the ZERP era in 2021, YL was selling off their equity chunks. They were getting out of the business, and though they picked up on it, they knew what was going to happen, that this was untenable. Sold off massive chunks of the big companies that were taking the C and D, reinvested that into the smaller companies, and now we're taking them off the table. So instead of looking for the grand slam exits, they were taking doubles, triples, and even like solo home runs and turning them into massive returns for their LPs. And so what I think you're seeing is the smart exiting of good cyber companies in Israel, knowing that now is the correct time to be exiting these companies.
Yeah, and a lot of these acquisitions, these are very early companies, so So Silk, just to cover what they do, there's a line here in the announcement. They developed a platform enabling security managers to automatically receive a comprehensive overview of vulnerabilities from all corporate alert tools.
So that gets bought into something else. It has to.
Is it like Nucleus?
Well, my point is, if that has to get bought into something else, now is the time to do the exit before everybody else starts having dance partners and you're left on the sidelines, right? So that's why we're going to see a continued growth and rash of these exits for sure.
Yeah, centralized visibility in a risk state. It does look like they're potentially competing with like a Nucleus, all that kind of pull all your vulnerabilities into one place, normalize them, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But the other point I was making is they've got 12 million in funding, and one of the others we just covered that got acquired also, and Title had 15 million seed round. So these are all early stage companies, or a lot of these are early stage companies that are getting snapped up.
And they're exiting with great multiples and great returns for everybody involved: the founders, the employees, the investors.
Did we lose you, Tyler?
Instead of taking the moonshot and failing.
Oh, there you are.
I'm back.
I lost you there for a bit.
That's probably for the better.
No, I'm sure everybody will hear it the way this platform works. All your audio and video will be, I'll sound like a crazy person. Everybody will be like, I heard him just fine. So
sounds good.
All right. Yeah. So couple interesting things here. I'm still trying to digest and figure out exactly what LimaCharlie means by bi-directional capabilities here. I think they mean that they're doing some response stuff as well. And it looks like they're trying to, so I understand they're a pseudo SIM, or they're at least being used as a SIM, like for SecOps teams, less so for, the compliance use cases of SIM. But it sounds like they built SOAR. It sounds like what this announcement is, eliminating the need to rely on a third-party solution to make changes. So it sounds to me like, maybe you don't need Tines if you're using LimaCharlie, is kind of how I'm taking this announcement.
I had the opportunity to meet with Maxime, the founder and co-founder and CEO of LimaCharlie, I don't know, maybe a month ago. We had just a phenomenal debate and discussion about the particulars of his market and this market. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It's kind of like a chasm play, like cyber asset management collection of this broad-based set of data. But then instead of just saying, here's your data, let's query it, let's make assumptions on it, and then route things to whatever workflows you use, they just go fix stuff. They go direct to the end result, and they pull the trigger and make changes occur. And fundamentally, Maxime was painting a picture to me that was a very large vision, very much like that. Like, why do we have to approve stuff? Why do we have to get into situations where, results have to go through human beings? Let's make this stuff just get fixed, a self-healing universe, right?
Yeah.
And he's just really, really good at painting that big vision. And I thought he did a really intriguing presentation to me for sure.
Yeah. All right. We also have some interesting, more general announcements here, getting out of the company or startup focused stuff. Chrome to fight cookie theft with device-bound session credentials. And if I'm understanding this, so the reason info stealers are a thing is they can gather up your cookies and now they're logged in as you. And that always struck me as insane. The fact that you can just move an OAuth key from one system on one side of the planet to another system on the other side of the planet, and now they're logged into Slack as if they're you. So it sounds like, Slack is maybe a poor example because that's not within the browser. It's or it could be, but most people run it as a standalone application. But that's what I'm taking this to mean is that now these credentials is going to make it a little bit harder for info stealers to scoop this stuff up and people to abuse, your OAuth credentials, your saved credentials that sit in cookies.
What I want to know, and this is where I'm going to pose the question to both our audience that's way smarter than me and anybody out there who knows the intricacies of how this is going to work. If what they're talking about is tying tokens and cookies and things like that to a device, doesn't that all have to happen client side? And isn't one of the fundamental tenets of cyber is never trust client side? So isn't this going to be an arms race scenario where we can break sandboxes in the browser or escape cookie things in the browser, kind of like, might be a pwn to own storyline over time? Because how do you tie a token to a device? How does that fundamentally actually work in a way that cannot be modified, rootkitted, or otherwise defeated, right? Anything that's on the client side can and will be defeated over time. It may not be easy,
right?
But we've seen it in hardware on, the modding of PlayStations and Xboxes over the years, right? They just assumed we're going to put in the security controls in the device, therefore we're fine. Anything that's client side can and will be bypassed. So I'm not sure how this works, and that's where I want to pose that question to anybody. Please put it in comments, get on our Discord, send me a DM, explain how this actually works to me in Tyler's level layman terms. I'd love to understand it better.
Yeah, and there is I found a good explainer here that is linked to from the link that we have here. I think this is this is Security Week, what we've linked to here, but it's called DBSC for short, device bound session credentials. And there's a link there to GitHub where they've got a bit of an explainer. Apparently, it's not the first attempt to do this. Token binding was the first attempt, but they say application level binding and browser initiated refreshes are two things that make this better than token binding. But I'm not familiar with either of them. It looks like they're leveraging TPMs, and there are public and private keys involved here. Yeah, it's part of how they're preventing you from copying it off. But I don't know how that private key is generated, how it's tied to the TPMs would make sense for
TPMs is the only thing that you could say to me that might make me go, yep, okay, maybe. If you don't mention that, everything's defeatable. Like even TPMs could be defeatable potentially, but the closer you get to the hardware, the more likely it is that this type of protection will work. And then it's a scenario of how do you create it and surface it so that it's invisible to the user, that the end user's not turned off, that they don't have to do anything to actually have it operate well. All of those things are massive assumptions, before I even firmly get behind the potential success of this.
And apparently TPMs are fairly slow. So that's one of the considerations here is the latency for signing operations. Yep. And but apparently it's quick enough that they think it's reasonable to do this, to use a TPM for this. All right. There's some open source software called Poutine, and I included it for that reason. Came out of a startup we talked about not too long ago. I think they came out of stealth with some seed, Boost Security, which is Montreal based. So of course they named their open source project Poutine. But the reason they named it that is Poutine also generally means messy, is kind of like a general word for talking about when something's messy. So this is all about finding issues in pipelines and build pipelines.
I'm an honorary Canadian, having been born in Niagara, Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
so I'm an honorary Canadian. I love my poutine. And I don't even care what the rest of the article says. I just love that they call it poutine, because poutine, when done well, is phenomenal. And if you've never had poutine, go to Canada and get yourself some poutine. It's well worth doing.
Yes, it is. So GitHub Actions, basically it's scanning for common issues in CI/CD pipelines. So it's like a security scanner, but specifically for that, and you hook it into your CI/CD pipeline. Number 22 is an essay from Phil Venables called "A Letter from the Future." And in this story, he's kind of imagining this, how a infrastructure attack, much like we've seen Russia try and do on Ukraine, but many years in the future, and instead the attack is on the US. And it's kind of an imagination of, so it creates this attack so he can kind of talk about, okay, what are the cyber organizations we need at the government level? How do they need to operate? How they need to interact with other government organizations like FEMA? in these kinds of situations. So it's kind of this opportunity to write out this imagining of like ideally this is how a response to a cyber attack on physical infrastructure should work.
U.S. head of U.S. Cyber Force. The head of U.S. Cyber Force is that's the punchline. I think it's really cool. It's well written. It's very storytelly. It's just a cool little fun read, and good on you, Phil, for taking a shot like this. I mean, it's right in your wheelhouse. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and it's in response to something the White House published. I think this was part of what was published, a PCAST, Cyber Physical Resilience Report. So yeah, go. I haven't read that report. The White House has been putting out so many cybersecurity related things. I haven't had time to read them all or keep up with them. But
yeah,
it's really interesting to see cyber so front and center. Could you imagine back in 2001, all this cybersecurity stuff coming out of the White House, Tyler?
No, 100%. But it's interesting. I was listening to one of our favorite shows that I reference quite frequently, the All In Pod, recently, and they were talking about drone warfare being the future of warfare. That is not a leap very far from cyber warfare when you're talking about drone warfare, right? It's one thing to have people in VR helmets flying these drones and actively making attacks or whatever. But the problem with that is, you jam that scenario and the end drone immediately loses its capability to be controlled and dies, right? So that signal has to be up. The next era of warfare is not
unless
human
it's
controlled.
Autonomous.
The next era is no longer human controlled. It is autonomous controlled drone warfare. And that brings up a whole other level of, and this where I got this was taking it back to what needs to happen in the government sector is how do you control those kinds of cyber warfare things? Now, taking the what used to just be, hey, let's take the water supply offline or the electric grid offline, to, hey, we also have a fully autonomous attack systems that are AI derived and driven. That's not a far leap from cybersecurity.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't want it to, if it loses comms, you don't want it to drop out of the sky, especially if it has munitions on it or something like that. You want it to, hopefully it knows how it got to where it is and it can go back to where it came from. So at the very least, you'd want some autonomous function to be able to do that.
They're talking well beyond that. They're talking just giving it a mission. A mission
not a great idea.
That's what they're talking about doing, and many, and that's really, actually really a lot of this new technology is coming out of high tech startups in Silicon Valley that are starting to press this.
There's some movies I'm going to recommend to those high tech Silicon Valley startups.
Well,
some sci-fi movies.
So this is what they were talking about this is what they were talking about on the All In Pod was like, there's certain investors that won't put money behind that. And then there's other investors that say that this is something that we absolutely have to get behind because others, we need to create the defense systems against it. And it reminded me of the old days of early cyber when we were talking about, SQL injections and buffer overflows, and people were doing offensive research and then counterpointing that with defensive research. And there were certain investors that would never fund an offensive research-based cyber company in 2001. And then there were others that were like, yeah, I'll fund an offensive company. Let's go. Right. So I think we're on yet another precipice and era. And I think it'll be after I'm long gone before it becomes the de facto war mechanism. But you can take all of that kind of thought exercise and apply it to what Phil Venables wrote. It's kind of cool.
Well, some actors on the stage, like they're, the ethics part, is not the same in other parts of the world as it is in the US. In the US, it's very divided. In other places, it's not even a barrier, right? Like it'll just happen. If the technology is there and
it'll be used,
the skills and the people, it'll just happen.
Yep. They're talking about, for what it's worth, they're even talking about using these type of systems in the Ukraine right now.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. Oy.
Sorry to be a downer.
Automated war bots. Yeah, great.
That's right. It's coming, man.
There's also an essay here I haven't had time to really dig into. Robots dream of root shells, and
Yeah, I think that what this is about is dancing about automated detections of vulnerabilities in code, and
right.
using AI in the fundamentals of code, bug detection and security flaw detection.
Hmm.
Um, I do think it's an interesting article as well. I'm going to put it on my my must read deep read list as opposed to a quick skim, which I've had the opportunity to do thus far. But um, man, how we're using AI throughout, and Ben does a great job of explaining this. Ben Hawks, the author of this article, how we're using AI throughout cybersecurity right now is so incredible to me. It's just everything is fresh and innovative when you layer in AI and say, how can we make this decision broader? How can we take, instead of looking at one data point, look at 10 data points in the context holistically and make a smarter decision? We're just seeing AI in cyber, not cyber of AI, but AI in cyber becoming such a massive differentiator over the course of the next few years. And so they're doing a AI, I forget what they call it, AICC, which I forget what it exactly stands for, but essentially it's a event in Las Vegas later this year.
Yeah, I thought it was a DARPA competition.
Yes, but the semifinals are taking place in Las Vegas later this year, with the finals being held at a year later in August. And basically, it's like, hey, can AI find real time bugs in real world software?
Right.
Um, it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very fun to watch. I had a pitch recently of somebody who's doing this, and they're creating the automations to automatically fix it as well. So if you can find it, and then you can create the pull request that says,
Yeah,
here, now it's fixed, and the dev looks at it for a second, goes, looks good to me, except we're shortening our mean time to remediation significantly.
sure. Yeah, and it looks like we're also talking here about more purpose-built large language models.
Yeah.
So we've been seeing that trend pretty much all year so far. We've seen a bunch of purpose-built LLMs, and yeah, I think we're just going to see more and more of that as people find LLMs useful. Instead of just using the general purpose ones, we're going to see some more that have very specific training sets for very specific problem solving. So we've got a few breaches here. The Cisco Duo one, I don't think anything at Cisco was breached, but a supplier exposed a metadata around SMS messages, so no contents of SMS messages. So I don't know how big of a deal that is, but certainly you could discern some patterns and things like that. And then United Health, apparently they I guess this was maybe via filing or something like that, but we have a number now about how much that ransomware event hurt them, and it's apparently 872 million. I heard they paid like a $20 million ransom or something like that. But
Wow.
my first question is that a big deal for them? And the answer is maybe not really. They're a 100 billion revenue a year company, so it's less than 1%. But then my second question is, was this an actual loss, or is this just a deferment of payments because their payment system wasn't functioning during that time, and now they're just waiting for those payments to now come through?
Yeah.
So
Good question.
yeah, I don't know if any of that's a real big deal for them. I've also heard that they get hit a second time, and they're dealing with that right now. So
Yeah, I've heard that too.
what a mess. So yeah, a bit of a dumpster fire there. We could throw a dumpster fire graphic up for that, and we can keep it up for the next one, which is a paper. Ken White, my good friend Ken White, was posting about this on Mastodon during the night because he's over in Asia for Black Hat Asia, which is where this talk was. And basically, the way people are integrating large language models into their apps just leaves them wide open for remote code execution through the LLM prompting. So whether it's prompt injection that you're getting in there, or just the like a typical Chat GPT prompt interface, they're finding maybe not the majority, but a lot of these apps were vulnerable to remote code execution. They were getting root, using basic 20 plus year old SQL injection and remote code execution techniques. Basically, just give me a shell, please. Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
You know, and like telling it to download their their rat, and it just downloads it, or their their remote shell code, and it just downloads it from the internet, runs the code, and boom, they got a shell.
This is definitely a dumpster fire. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, come on, guys. We got to figure this one out. You can't let the 101 low-hanging fruit stuff work. You just can't.
Yeah, the TLDR from Ken White was the most popular chat-assisted app frameworks aren't even doing basic process sandboxing or sane file/network isolation. We're still very much in the early infancy of security maturity with current gen LLMs. And we saw this in the early days with containers and stuff like that too. We saw a bunch of bugs come out where it was like, look, have we learned nothing? You know, like all the stuff we've learned, a new technology comes out and everybody starts building it without applying any of the lessons that we learned over the previous decade.
Not surprised. Not surprised.
So here we are again. Sanitize your input.
But
it's this new concept we just came up with yesterday. It's called sanitize your input.
And you know what they're going to do it with? They're going to do it with a
large language
LLM
model
firewall. LLM firewall will do it. That'll do their input filtering. It's coming. Mark my words. I've actually seen it from a couple big vendors, an LLM firewall, a Gen AI firewall.
Well, I wish I had one of your delicious drinks. I feel like I need it now.
Yeah, you can't see it now because I've drank it all. But on Thursdays we drink pink, which is my raspberry smash bourbon drinks. So definitely get it, guys. Get it. It's good.
All right, let's see if we can get that in the show notes or something like that. Well, thank you very much, Tyler, for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun.
I love talking to you, buddy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And a big thanks to anybody watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see you next week.